Everyone, I'm here in one of my favorite cities, Nashville, Tennessee, and I'm going to take you to hang out with one of my good friends, Paul Moak. He's an amazing guitar player with tons of touring experience, but he turned producer and studio guitar player. So we're going to hang out with him, and he's going to talk to you about how to be a better studio musician, a recording guitarist. And we're also going to see his amazing gear collection. So let's head out. Let's get off this bridge. It's a really long way down to the water, so let's leave. Hey everyone, we're here at the Smokestack. This is Paul, and if you've watched any of our videos over the past few years, you've probably seen this scene pop up, and we'll link to those later. But so here we are. We have Paul. We're in the place surrounded by amazing gear. One of my favorite studios ever, and definitely my favorite one in Nashville. And so I guess the first place to start off with you is, how did you transition into this world of studio, being a touring guitarist, and now this?
Well, I was always recording. So I had a 4-track in high school, cassette deck.
Tascam.
Yep.
Yeah.
And bouncing tracks down. The sales point when I got the thing was that the Beatles made Sgt. Pepper's on a 4-track, so then it was like, well, there's nothing stopping me from making Sgt. Pepper's. But when I got to Nashville, a couple of years in, it was affordable enough to start recording at home. So I got Digital Performer 3 and a laptop.
The first thing I ever used was Adobe Audition.
Yeah.
Which was Cool Edit.
Okay,
Pro.
Yeah. It's a PC thing, though, right?
I had a PC, and I had the M-Audio 2424 stereo sound card. It's another episode. Anyway.
But so to answer your question, I was touring and I was making money as a touring guitar player. But when I was at home, I was always recording, trying to capture the sounds that were on my favorite records and doing sessions. But I definitely had to make a conscious decision in the back half of my 20s to abandon the road to really kind of go full throttle into the studio. And that was a difficult transition in my life because most of the money I was making at the time was on the road. But, you just got to follow your heart.
I've joked with you several times. There's like $1 trillion worth of gear in here. I mean, this desk. I mean, this is a phenomenal place. I feel like you can walk in here and just put an arm out and hit a piece of gear that you may have never seen. I mean, we have guitars, preamps, just rack effects, tape echoes everywhere. This entire top in front of us is full of stuff I've not even seen, except here. How many years of gear are we sitting in the middle of? Over
my entire professional career, so over 20 years. It's been a piece at a time, man.
Yeah.
And some pieces are bigger than others, but first comes the learning of what it is. So if I hear sound on a record, I'm like, oh, they, go to the end of the internet and find that they used a space echo,
Okay.
Then it's like, oh, well, how do I get one of those, and then finding one, selling what I have to sell to get one, or making the money to get one. It's just been like a piece at a time.
How many times have you gone to the depths of the internet, down the rabbit hole, you find out exactly what someone uses, you get it, and you can't get the sound? It wasn't necessarily the thing that you thought you about. How does that
Well, I mean, that goes back to the old saying that, the tone is in the fingers. And you can have all this stuff and it doesn't matter. This entire building and everything in it is the last 5% of what you hear on a record.
That's cool, yeah.
If we get something and it's not inspiring, we'll sell it to get something that is.
Yeah.
And really all it is just having tools around so that when people come in and are inspired, that if they say, oh, I really want to get the snare drum sound from Nevermind, then it's like, well, I know they use this.
Dave Grohl.
Yeah, exactly. First of all, you need Dave Grohl, but this drum will get you close to a starting point, At the end of the day, you want to create your own sonic stamp, and so all this stuff is just meant to trigger ideas and be inspiring.
When a guitar player comes in here, what is something that you see happen, that you see a young guitarist or someone who's new to the studio world? What are some things or a thing that you wish they knew about this world of a studio and how different it might be from playing down on the strip, or something?
Yeah. I think the first thing I would want to tell them is just to breathe and relax and have a good time.
Yeah.
It's like, if you're anything like me, you've probably dreamt of this moment for a long time. So just enjoy it. And when it's time to work, we'll work, but I want you to soak it in. I remember so many times that I recorded or was a session guitar player on records in like amazing studios like Abbey Road and Record Plant and Ocean Way, where it's like I was so worried about doing my job that I didn't like really take the time to like think about the legacy of those places, and then you leave and it's like, man, I wish I had, wish I hadn't been so inside my own head, This is a 63 Jaguar, and I got it in a music go-round in Minneapolis, Minnesota when I was on tour in 99 or 2000, somewhere around there. It's been all over the world with me and played on hundreds of records with it. Had some pretty key moments in my life. Like I played this at my wedding, which that was kind of awkward because my wife was like, will you get off the stage and come dance with me? When a guitar player comes in and they might have, all the newest stuff or whatever, really your ability to speak into the project, to tap into that part of yourself that is giving something on a creative level to the song. If those things aren't there, it really doesn't matter.
Yeah.
And so, like you have the guitar player that comes in and they can only play through their amp,
Yeah.
And I went through that phase where it was like, well, why should I play? I actually remember, I haven't thought about this in years, dude. I got hired to play guitar on an Amy Grant record when I was like 21. And I showed up and I had this beautiful Gibson J100 that was my only acoustic guitar, but it sounded like $1 million, and I was so proud of it. And the producer on the session put me under the mic and I was playing. He's like, I love the part. I'm going to send someone in. I want to swap guitars. And they gave me something. I don't even remember what it was. And I was like, but this isn't the guitar.
You're like heartbroken.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then I played the same part and they were like, that's perfect, And I went out and listened, and I remember going home and just thinking like, but why didn't they use my guitar? And now that I'm on this side of the glass, it's like, of course, it wasn't the sound they were looking for, and this one worked, or whatever.
Yeah, so it's like that important thing is like to serve the songs and not get hung up with the gear and stuff.
Exactly.
Yeah, I've seen so many phenomenal musicians in my career that like dudes that just plug into an amp, or the drummer that comes to the gig with hats kicking a snare.
Yeah.
And it's like, wow. I remember being a kid and it was like I came home from school and played guitar.
Yep.
It was all about playing guitar. I wanted to learn the riff. I wanted to read the tab to In Bloom and perfect it, And I can tell as I've gotten older, you like feel that curiosity more with gear when maybe we should be learning to be better players.
Yeah, well, there's a lot to be said for limitations, and we live in an era now where there are no limitations. You can have whatever sound you want in your laptop or whatever. And as amazing as that technology is, there's something really endearing about saying, okay, this is the set of tools that I have to make with it what I can. And we kind of came from more of that generation where it was like, I didn't have a Strat, so if I wanted to make my guitar sound like a Strat, I had to split the coils on my humbucker, which ruined the guitar that I had because I drilled into it or whatever. Yeah. And, it's different for every generation. I didn't have the laptop with 1 million sounds, but now we use that alongside some of the tools that I grew up with. The soul of who you are and what you're bringing to the project it's just worth its weight in gold compared to all this stuff that we're sitting around,
Yeah. Do you find that a piece of gear you've never touched, plugged in through, heard your signal path through versus something you're familiar with. Is there a difference in how those inspire you? Like, do you feel like a guy comes in here to record, there's gear he's never seen? Does something magical happen with that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a different aesthetic. If I plug into like my pedal board and I have my own set of sounds, then there's a confidence there that can have a place on a record, you know? And it allows me to push myself because I'm comfortable, you know? If you were to walk in and I was like, Josh, play a part, and I plugged you through my pedal board and gave you a guitar, then there's an uncomfortability of the unknown that can be equally pleasing.
I would just be dive bombing on your whammy the whole song.
So this is the live room.
It's beautiful.
And, you know, I do a lot of bands. We try to keep as many people in here as possible. And I'm a big advocate of a healthy amount of bleed. And then over here we got a bunch of pedals. This is one of my first compressors, was the compression side of this Route 66.
Such a good pedal.
Yeah, this one I've had forever, the Fuzz Probe. This is this box we don't really use a whole lot, so it looks cool. The Ring Stinger.
I don't have this one. I have everything but this one.
You know, it's actually a really musical pedal.
What's the fundamental guitar rig you would advise someone to like focus on? Like, what's the element? Real simple. What would you say to come into a studio and do a good, well-rounded job? What are some pieces of gear that you just couldn't live without and that you would advise?
Sure. Well, an overdrive of some sort. You know, I kind of look at it as, you know, your dynamics, so compression, which is really a misunderstood pedal in the guitar world.
Yeah, for sure.
It's really hard to... I never understood what it did until I kind of got into the studio. And so you may or may not need that on your board.
We'll have to do an episode about compression.
Yeah. Overdrive distortion. Everybody knows how to use delay, I feel like, but it's probably overused in a lot of ways. But to me, some of my favorite guitar players use delay more as like more of a vibrato kind of effect, and it's not really influencing the way they technically play. The way it would be if you were to dial in an edge, you know.
Yeah, it's not rhythmic, it's more just bass
vibe. Yeah. Chorus and flange are definitely stuff that we use a lot in the studio that are kind of misunderstood from a live perspective, just because there's a point where it's cool, really not cool. Yeah. And it's a very narrow range in there.
I would say that too about drive sounds.
Yeah.
Like, I will never forget, I was in LA and a guy, I'm sitting in a room like this, is a mastering room, and he puts up the tapes of Back in Black, like front of some barefoot speakers, a killer setup. And like, I'm not a massive AC/DC fan, but it's awesome. Yeah. But, you know, I don't listen to it like daily or weekly or whatever. And then he played, and I know Back in Black, everybody's heard it. And when I actually focused and heard it, I was like, that's not that distorted. But then as a player, I remember learning the riff, and I probably had my gain all the way, because it's like I associated that with like, this is rock, this is all of it, and so that's
I feel the same way about Appetite for Destruction.
Yeah,
like most every rock recorded guitar tone is less overdriven than you perceive it to be.
It's way less. You're feeling something from a song, and you think you know what it is, but in the studio, it's created in a totally different way. And like, those guitars were like shockingly clean to me. It blew my mind.
It happens all the time where I'll get a tone dialed in out there that I think is overdriven, and then you come in here and it just sounds oversaturated. Well, and you know, to answer your original question, what I always used to try to do when I was doing a lot of sessions was to have a couple of like go-to gags that I would do, per se, which would be more of a combination of pedals, like delays into delays, or you know, pitch shifting, noise, kind of like if you're going to use a whammy, don't just use it by itself, use it with some delay and reverb behind it, and trying to create vibe, like something that the producer would say, oh man, we can base where we're going around that sound because that's like a thing.
It's a thing, yeah.
And so you have textures like that, and then you have melodic parts. And as a session player, or any guitarist walking into any situation, I would want to be able to approach it from the melodic standpoint, but also a textural standpoint. The go-to is usually something that's around 12 inches. Super Reverb's 410s, AC 30. I would say if you're gonna get into the studio thing, having open back and closed back options for guitarists coming in, that's probably the main thing. A lot of rock, that tighter, lower sound is sometimes a closed back cabinet because the sound is really only coming at you out of the cabinet, has nowhere to go on the back side. And then on the open back, people tend to describe them as a bit chimier, more open, obviously, because the sound is coming out the back too and wrapping around.
So one really useful subject that I think you could shed a lot of light on is, like for instance, what I do, people make demos of guitar pedals. And, a lot of times in my experience or in those videos, you're hearing a good sounding demo of a pedal and a guy setting like I am now by myself.
Yeah.
I, in my experience, have seen where that doesn't necessarily make a good sound on a record. And there's like a confusion there with like, you're at home in your bedroom and your guitar sounds good.
Mm-hmm.
How does that translate? If I'm at home playing, I love it, I come in here, does that sound work in here every time?
Right. I would say no. It's well, what that makes me think of is back when I was starting out, I had a Zoom multi-effects unit.
505?
Probably. And all the presets on it were to show how many things it could do,
Yeah.
but they were so outrageous. If there was flange, it was, the delays turn all the way up. And distortion's real saturated. And so what I think you're saying, and what's true, is like when you come into the studio, there's a realization very quickly that I'm part of something that's bigger than me.
Yeah.
And so what I'm doing has to fit in the context of that. And a lot of times what that means specifically with guitar tone is the first thing we do is push these two channels to engage the EQ and kill a lot of the low end of the guitar so that the bass and drums can come through.
Yeah.
And
so it's not. So in other words, it'd be fighting with the drums and the bass and whatever.
Yeah, I typically try to get the sound right on the floor so that we have to do less of this.
Yeah.
But a lot of times, if you have a guitar player that comes in and they have their thing dialed in, usually in my experience, the guitar tone is as big as they can make it. Or as wet as they can make it, or whatever. And so it's just tweaking that stuff as you go along to try to fit in the song.
So that plays along with what you said earlier, which was phenomenal. Like, I bought a new guitar, I'm going to carry this in and make a beautiful recording with it. Is it the right thing or not? Are we asking that question? Yeah. And our tone is the same way. I'm in my bedroom, I have this fat, huge tone. How could I expect that in reality to work in a record that we're building from the ground up? Yeah. So that's what you're saying. Like, that's such a huge reality for guitar players.
Just remember, you're there to collaborate. It's about working with other people. And so you got to decide what are hills that you want to die on and what aren't. And I think tonally, it's like, you got to trust the ears of the other people that are trusting you with their music.
Yeah.
Hello, kids. For record time today, we have Long Gone Before Daylight by the Cardigans, one of my favorite records. You might know them from the hit Love Fool from the Romeo and Juliet soundtrack, but a few records later, they made this masterpiece, and the reason why I wanted you guys to know about it is the entire record is beautiful. The songs are beautiful, the performances are beautiful, the way it was recorded is beautiful, and it's just a masterpiece in my opinion. So Leave us a comment below. What record is beautiful to you in any of those ways? Let us know.
Pretty good, Paul. He nailed it. Nailed it. This has been a fantastic episode. I know I learned stuff. I hope that you guys did as well. Man, thanks for having us out and spending your beautiful Nashville afternoon with us. If you like this episode, please hit like, subscribe to the channel, and there's a bell. Click that and you'll be notified of any new episodes. So until next time, this is it. It's a wrap. Have a great day.